Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder here on Drum Talk TV. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm up in the mountains east of Phoenix in Globe, and we are here with a second time repeat offender. His first hazing wasn't enough, so Gary Husband is back coming to us from a beautiful, rainy, sunny, cloudy day in London. Gary, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Dan. Such a pleasure to see you and to be back. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Very good to see you as well. For those who don't know, Gary is not only an extremely talented drummer, but at least as talented on the black and white on the keyboards. Um, I think the first thing I want to bring to our audience's attention, whether they're musicians or just music fans, remind everybody or inform them for the first time which instrument did you start with, and how has the value of learning multiple instruments helped your musicality, even if it's one instrument's knowledge while playing on another instrument in the studio or on stage, just having that extracurricular knowledge?
Well, I have to tell you, I was harboring a desire to play drums because I was lucky enough to have a father who played in a big band when I was still under under 10, I guess, and I'd go with him to the recording sessions and stuff and watch the whole thing kind of unfold in front of my eyes. And in the process sort of learn a lot about studio discipline right there. And when the recording light came on, don't make a sound, I'm being warned. And I'm sitting there, but along with that silence comes the tension, and you feel the tension of all the musicians because it's a live band. It's 17 guys or whatever,
Yeah.
and the pressure's on to get a collective take for everybody. So and you feel that, and
It's funny how guys that are like a three piece or four piece and they go into the studio to record the rhythm tracks first, how they agonize over that. And you're talking about a whole 17-piece band, just bam,
that's
recorded live. No
that's
pressure.
no, no, all there. Everybody got their charts. They've probably had one or maximum two run throughs of something,
Yeah.
and then for a take, and it's down, and they go through about maybe 12, 14 tracks or arrangements in a day. So
Wow.
getting back to my point, it was I was just watching the drummer all the time. I didn't even realize I was watching the drummer all the time, but I was.
Would your
And
dad play?
well, my dad was principally a flautist, flute
Okay.
player, but he also doubled a lot. So he had sort of piano knowledge, but he was a great arranger as
Mm.
well. And so he had sort of a few different situations um, as a musician and as a writer and stuff. So, which was great because he went on to work for TV and kind of drafted me in to start writing things as well, which was sort of a great induction into that whole side of things. But really, my beginnings are piano. So I come from classical piano, a very brutish teacher. I've spoken about her many times. She's not
Yeah.
around anymore. She, for the first time, she can't actually sort of uh, instigate any violence on me like she used to do in the day.
Oh,
I mean,
goodness.
her whole thing was like sort of intimidation, cruelty, embarrassment,
Wow.
intimidation.
Sounds like my marriage. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
There's people watching who know my wife. Sorry, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, no, 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 I didn't. But I wouldn't accept that down anyway. So,
Nah.
but this thing was quite a thing to go through, and it wasn't just piano lessons,
Yeah.
Dan. It was like it was really really heavy, intense classical piano
And was
thing.
it standard status quo, pretty standard for that sort of regimen and that style of teaching in England then?
Well, it was standard from her to the people that she valued. Unfortunately, I came to her by way of pressure from some other department in the education side
Mm,
and said, well, because I was trying to get a scholarship at a place where Yorkshire, where I'm from in England, in the north of England, uh, doesn't really talk to Lancashire. And this there's a thing called the Battle of the Roses. Anyway, you don't want to hear all
The
that.
border skirmish, the local
It's like,
border
no, no,
skirmish.
yeah, but we've got adequate musical facility here, and just to prove it, we're going to line you up with this lady, and you will go and study with her. And I'm okay,
Oh,
and so the misery began. But what was actually sort of taking place on a very positive level was that she was, along with the brutality and cruelty and intimidation, she had a real amazing classical technique. I mean, it
oh,
was the real technique on piano. You watch any of the brilliant classical piano stars of today, and you see that kind of technique exhibited. I don't have it anymore, but I had a grounding of development in that technique, and it was enough to set me up for the rest of my life.
wow.
It's still with me now. And just the execution that you have on keyboard, and it all came from like really painfully slow stuff over months.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was the real hard stuff. I mean, no shortcuts whatsoever. So it was a real kind of intense classical piano study. But in the process, I got to play a lot of amazing uh, Eastern European classical music and Western classical music from all periods, and it was almost sort of it was like being introduced to this world of absolute wonderment of music, the classical music. Only problem was I was an improviser, and uh, and I was also listening to Billy Cobham and Tony Williams and everything else. So I mean, of course, it's there was quite a conflict there.
Yeah. Was it difficult for you? You started with discipline in your music life just as an observer, you mentioned in the studio, and,
Yeah,
you would have been told up if you talk while the recording lights on, all of that influence. Then you end up with this teacher with the strictest of discipline and lessons.
yeah.
But here you are as a creative, I imagine, and your brain wanting your fingers to just run away and make shit up. Your influences, I'm guessing, with you mentioned Billy Cobham and you've worked with John McLaughlin, the two forefathers of fusion music. So Mahi Fusion
Yeah,
Orchestra, you probably just
yeah.
wanted to create it, but you're being held to very rigid boundaries, to say the least, right? How did you
Oh,
contain yourself, and at what point did that all burst out?
well, it was sort of, fighting within me to burst out, but I had to control it. I mean, there was a side of me, a big respect for my father, one thing, because if he said, if you're going to learn piano, you're going to learn classical piano, you're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And yes, and so that was to be adhered to and respected. But also what she was, despite the sort of personality traits, was an incredibly gifted person and incredibly demanding in the process on anybody who came to her. So I really had a tough time with it, but at the same time I hung with it because I knew that this feeling of and it really was, when Dan, people talk about whatever you put into something, you start to get
You
back,
get out. Yeah.
and the energy and the restraint necessary to be practicing incredibly slow tempo phrases in classical music, but all the time with this incredible discipline on how exactly you play. I mean, I had coins on my hand,
Oh,
you know.
wow.
If they dropped off, she'd whack me with a cane.
Oh,
This was
wow.
1972. Don't remember.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
1970s style. I mean, you've seen Whiplash, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen
Yeah. In
Whiplash.
fact, I have my own megaphone from when I give lessons. There you go.
Well, let me tell you, this guy looks like a pussycat in comparison to her.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Wow.
so it was a great time not to spend too much time with it, but I really derived a lot, as a player. Um, of course, nothing in terms of the kind of music I wanted to be involved in, or as an improviser. All
Hmm.
this was absolutely shunned. You know, there was only one music, classical music, serious music, as they'd call it,
Right.
or she would call it. And eventually, you know, like some years ahead, once I'd really got the goods, and I was kind of flying with it too. I was really, you know, I'd really progressed under her guidance, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it eventually the day came, and I thought, how can I get out of this situation? And I came up with the greatest plan, which was she already approved strongly of anything at all that I was listening to,
Right.
uh, apart from classical music, obviously. Uh, so come the day, I actually announced to her, I'm starting to take up drums.
She must.
Drum kit. I'm talking about loud, improvised, you know, outlandish and expressive and you know, jazz and rock and drums. All right. And she looked at me, and I remember exactly how still she was. Her face sort of changed color, and she got on the phone to my dad immediately and said, he will not be coming anymore. And
That was the plan, right?
and I was in the background. She was looking at the wall while she was speaking to my dad, and I was in the background going, "Yes." So, you know, I had it. But the thing with drums was, you know, I saw one particular performance on TV. It was the Stan Kenton Orchestra, and it was, I probably told you all this before, but it was the drummer from Indianapolis or wherever he was from. John Von Olen. Anyway, he was a
Hmm.
fantastic big band drummer. Also worked with Woody Herman, and went on to work and lead the Blue Wisp big band where he was located later in life.
Yeah.
Anyway, at that time he was absolutely something, and absolutely just I was spellbound by it. He was like, I mean, what he had done was like a really kind of like mini depth 24-inch bass drum
Yeah.
in a big band, you know,
Wow.
and tuned real low so that whenever he hit the drum, it was like a timpani.
Wow. I
There's
love
nothing
that.
in it, no holes, no damping.
Yeah.
So that when you really stomped on it and really like drove sections, it was absolutely just screaming with intensity, you know.
That's awesome.
I, I was just, and I just witnessed all this on TV right in front of me, and that's it, that's it, that's what
That's
I want to
cool.
do.
Well, let's show everybody a quick clip of how that ended up transferring to your musicality later in life. Check out this short solo. This is fusion inspired, improvisational by Gary. This is a short solo. Check this out. We'll be right back. I started from the beginning. I had it halfway through. I watched it 8 times. Here we go. Ah, I love that. I want to play the beginning of that again. Watch the right hand and then how the left hand, how they are doing the same thing. Check this out. I just love that. And folks, let me know. I'm watching over here on a monitor. I'm not watching the Flintstones like when I interviewed Carmine Appice or Nico McBrain. This is a serious interview. Um, let me know if you have questions for Gary, and I'll relay them or let us know where you are. Here's a question. Joshua VP, super fan of Drum Talk TV from Belgium, Gary, says, "Hey
Hello,
Gary, I'm
Joshua.
really yeah." He says, "Hey, I'm really enjoying the video casts. Any news on the master class, and how are the crystal beats meanwhile? Thanks." That's what Joshua VP says.
Oh, right, Joshua. Well, if you're on and watching, hi, man. I've had great posts from you, and I'm always very thankful for your comments and stuff. Um, Regarding a masterclass, did I say? Mm-hmm. what I have is these video casts. We're kind of developing them one by one, and they're at my site. And basically, they're a motivational thing for drummers. I
Mm,
don't know if anybody watching knows anything about them, but that's at garyhusband.com. Um, and and they're there really to kind of throw uh, out in the most sort of meaningful way that I could sort of manage it really to just about this attitude to drumming and being involved with lots of different kinds of music and this the application that takes place when you're doing that and all the things you're dealing with concentration, uh, technical stuff, sound, whatever,
yeah,
and they're all there.
that's cool.
Um, apart from I'm really in love with the idea of sort of inventing our own kind of exercises. You know, I mean, for instance, we all know the paradiddle, but you know, I've actually got to a sort of fifth level of this building compound paradiddles on top of paradiddles with the feet, played either half tempo or a dotted quarter note relation to how you to what's going on with your hands and all this, which promotes uh, concentration.
Yeah.
Something I'm, you know,
There's so much going on in drumming that I
yeah.
think
So
a lot of people,
yeah,
even drummers, take that for granted. You know, you're typically using all four limbs. If you have them, you're typically, even if you're
yeah,
just tapping time on the hi hat and doing a simple 4/4 beat, let alone something with time signature changes, dynamic changes, just there's
yeah.
just so much to it. I've always found that fascinating about drumming and being a drummer. And as a drummer, so this is an interesting topic because there's a lot of drummers that don't like drum solos. They find them boring. And
Mm,
I think that for a lot of people, that's genuine. I think for a lot of people, it's also somewhat of a defense mechanism because they don't solo and they're not creative and they don't know how to do that. And that's okay if that's not your area. I'm not diminishing that or criticizing it. But I think that sometimes it also might come from a place of they have so much humility that they might feel like if they say, "Oh yeah, my favorite drum solo and this drum solo," that that's all they care about in the music. I've kind of heard different things from different people. I like drum solos, the ones I like, simply because you get to hear that instrument, and the drum set is like even a four piece with a ride, one crash, and a hi hat. It's like a miniature orchestra. You got all these different things happening that have to happen in concert, no pun intended. And when you talk about what you said, that's what that reminds me of. And I think it's important for us to get to know our instrument. And I think
mm,
it's almost impossible to get to know our instrument if we don't learn how to solo and try stuff out, all the different zones that there are to hit on any one
mm,
given cymbal and
mm,
any one given drum for that matter. It just lends so much more to your toolbox as a musician the more you know your instrument. Just like a violinist or a flautist or any other instrument, you got to know that thing inside and out. And how do you do that if you never just let shit fly in solo or whatever? That's just my take on it. I don't know. What do you think of that, Gary?
no, I relate to you completely with it. I think, I mean, uh, you know, you can find yourself in the unlikeliest situations in a group format, be it playing at somebody's wedding or in a band led by a singer, and the whole thing's kind of rather dulcet, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and down in mood or whatever. And you know, you get the surprise, you know, kind of turnaround command from whoever it is, the artist out front, and they go ahead, play. You know, okay, so what are you going to play?
Yeah.
So my method really of looking at this, and I think it all ties in with what you were talking about, Dan, you know, this is to really acclimatize yourself to the situation with you in it
Yes.
and aware. of um, exactly where you're coming from at any one given time and place that a command like that might come along. And what are you going to do?
Right. Or the power might go out for
You
everybody
might
else on stage.
exactly. And who's the guy that's got to keep the momentum going? It's
Yeah.
you and me. You know,
Yeah.
it's us. You're
That's
like,
right.
yeah, do something, play, keep
Yeah.
going,
Keep us
you know.
covered.
And what do you do? So you do little variations. You do you do something that kind of, you could probably really start to bring people into your own thing with enough repetition into something gets a little hypnotic, and then
Ooh.
you start little variations on it and you can play with people. And part of the creative way of that with drums is just so nice because it's if you but first you have to allow yourself. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
You let yourself be.
And to not be afraid, I think some people
Not be
have,
afraid.
even drummers, just if they've never delved into that, a stereotype that a drum solo has to be as
Yeah.
fast as I and technical as I can play, possibly.
Yeah,
That's
but
so
that's sort of
untrue.
yeah, it is. I mean, if you're going for, if you're going for a lot of technically sort of superhuman fast stuff to try to like send people into a frenzy, great. I mean, that's
Yeah.
one way of doing it. I mean, but it is one way of doing it, and it's
Right.
I mean, to keep a beat and to start sort of adding little bits to it and bringing in this and doing that, you're kind of inviting people into a party, and you can start getting intense on those ideas, so
Yeah.
that people you start, once you've brought them in, and their attention is with you, you can play with them
Yeah.
and be adventurous. You can play with silences. You tend to hit the drums, but not hit them,
Right.
and entertained on various different levels. If that's what you're going for, I mean, it doesn't have to be all, you know, splash, shabazz, bang, or it can be
Right.
the most minimal thing. Just hold this thing and get them all kind of like dancing inside,
Absolutely.
and
And
then stuff.
yeah, I think another approach is to realize if you're playing songs that people know, and they probably do if they went to see you,
Yeah,
they know how those songs go. They can spot an error or an unintentional thing because they know how the song goes. When it's your turn to
yeah.
solo, no, there's no one knows what you're gonna do, you know?
No,
So anything goes, and there's no such thing as a mistake, only new discoveries is the way I look at it.
yeah. I look at. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
So
And
one
only opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other
Mhm.
things I wanted to ask you about today, and folks, again, sending questions, let us know where you're watching from. I'll check over here on my monitor. I'll be back there in a moment. Um, you've played with such a variety of musicians, and we're talking on drums now. Um, John
Mm.
McLaughlin, Alan Holdsworth, Level 42, Jack Bruce with Pat Travers. I mean, such an assortment of give us, if you could, two musicians you've played with that are completely different stylistically, and what some of the adaptations are that needed to happen, A, for it to work, and why you're a go to guy for stuff like that, why you get those calls so that other drummers can, and other musicians for that matter, can learn from that.
Well, for a start, it was always a dream to be a go-to guy, but I can't say that it was ever really opportunities were really presenting themselves like that to me personally, and I realized there's something I had to do about that. And one of the things I had to do about it foremostly was to start being proactive and to start uh, being in effective places, or the right place even, where you come into contact with people and start making friends. People start making friends, and through those friendships and meetings, you come into contact with people who feel similarly to the way we do, or respectively,
Right.
and uh, and you start to form a little alliance with people like that, to the point you might want to play with them. Um, and I think it's important that I mean, of course, it was a very different age when I was coming up. You just wanted to get yourself heard in any situation you could, basically,
Right.
so that people would hear you, they'd become aware of you, would go, oh, and on the good nights, people would take your number. They'd ask for your numbers. Are you available for doing things? Yeah, sure, you
Right.
bet.
Right.
You know, and from that point, I found out everything I could about that particular player or that artist, so that next time I'd see him or her, I was able to say, I really liked, when you hired such and such for that recording. He said, which recording? Oh, the one that, with the yellow cover, and it's like, you've got that? You go, yeah, yeah, I've got it. I didn't have it, but I borrowed it from somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you go to them and it's like, yeah, sure, I've got that record. I'm a great fan of that record. And they automatically you've won them over in a way.
Yeah.
You've put yourself in a situation where, and you've shown them respect and interest in what they do. You're not
Right. An
just
interest.
working. So, I would really try to be proactive in those kind of ways, just to try to get work, really, to sustain work. And it was always a great interest to me to do like lots of different types of music too. So I wanted to make myself as aware as I could with these various forms of music. Didn't matter what it
What's your first love as far as genres?
was. It probably just anything that involves expression, really. Being an improvisational musician at heart, I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's more
Cool.
the creative side. But you can be creative in the most restricting circumstances, and it's just as fulfilling to me to play in a situation with that imposes discipline and restrictions on you as far as drama, what you can't do, what does work and what doesn't work,
Right.
and use the creativity within those margins, so that they become the parameters of how far you can go. So in a sense, it sort of creates, um, you've got more of a conception of the area you can work in. And the moment you establish that with yourself, I think it's easier to be able to operate in it and really start to be effective within it. Because
Right.
where you've got these things, you've got these restrictions automatically.
Yeah.
Say if you're playing a blues gig, a lot of things are inappropriate. People think just because you play good jazz drums, you can automatically play good blues drums. Wrong. It's a
Right.
very, very different feeling. And
Absolutely. And
and
I
and the
think that goes
whole
across genres. Just because someone's real good at one thing doesn't mean they're great at another, you know?
yeah. And just because it's a swing beat on the ride cymbal doesn't mean it translates to blues,
Right.
because because that's a whole different feeling altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clipped, getting, and you hear the best of the blues drummers, you hear it sort of minimalized or taken really out, but it's still got that bite to it.
Yeah.
That's different from a jazz beat. You know, of course, there are all these different kinds of exponents of the same thing, and they're all different, but it's basically the same. There's the same kind of like intensity of commitment in that music that's not quite the same in another area. So it's just listening was the beginning of everything, and that helped me really start to become active and somehow confident in different musical areas. And I would research different people. If you're in a city, you can find, if you want to learn more about like North or South Indian drumming
Yeah.
technique, vocal techniques, conical, anything, in a cosmopolitan city, you're probably going to find a pretty good exponent of South Indian classical music.
Yeah.
They can't give you a rhythm lesson, they can give you a vocal lesson.
and you start to learn how they learn a little bit, in
Right.
a sense it's sung, it's felt, it's imagined way before it's played, and it's a very different thing. And you can go and look at the flamenco cajon players and the feeling they have and
Yeah.
how that corresponds in a way to the Indian music, through the Arabic and whatever else. And just study and listen and just be aware of how all these approaches to rhythm can actually exist in you. And not only that, hopefully what you can do within it that's a little bit more like you, because
Right.
kind of think that's what people are going to remember. It's like, yeah, yeah, you've got a nice feeling to that calypso or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But what I hear is a little bit of a difference, and I've not heard anybody do that before, and they pick up on it. And
Absolutely.
and it's not like being disrespectful to the musical tradition. It's actually just adding a little variation on it, so it becomes something that you're doing that maybe somebody else isn't
Yeah, and
doing.
those little variations are little micro steps in musical innovations and how music has progressed through
Yes.
the decades is the way I see it.
Yeah. And somebody hears you play this little skip beat that isn't usually there, and they go, wow, never occurred to me to put that there, So
Yeah.
somebody might hear that and expand on that in another way, just come back around and repeat
Yeah.
that skip beat later so that it echoes or is it like a precursor to the one that you've done in the beginning. And stuff like this starts to do the rounds because it's all this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful brother and sistership in drums.
Oh
This
yeah.
this is and believe me, with piano, it doesn't exist.
I
Sorry.
was just gonna say, I think that
That's-
I think drummers, and no offense to any other musician instrument communities, but drummers are the most communal. Um,
Oh,
my
right.
dad was not a drummer, but he made the observation. My parents used to go to as many gigs as possible that I played at when I lived in Los Angeles, grew up playing on the Sunset Strip and whatnot. And they used to go to as many gigs. My dad would hang out a lot, and he said drummers are like campers or golfers. Typically, they're not going to mess with anybody's stuff, and B, the other thing about drummers that I don't see nearly as much and somewhat not at all in certain instruments is the sharing of oh wow, how'd you get that sound? Let me well, come check it out. You want to play it? Whereas I've seen keyboardists cover the front of the keyboards, you can't tell what they're using. Guitar players got something in front of their pedal board. They turn around when they do a solo, you can't see their tapping technique. Whereas drummers are more communal. They're typically the first ones to a gig. They're always on the side of the stage, typically watching the band before them. There's just a different thing. And typically, two other things: they have a great sense of humor and they're super hyper intelligent.
Hey.
Hello, is this thing on? Try the roast beef. I'll be here Thursdays and Fridays.
I second that. I
Yeah,
second.
I think all that's very true.
And also this handsome aspect
Oh,
too.
the handsomeness is like the needle's like.
Man, you know.
So,
So
given all the music that you grew up on, all the music you've played, all the music you've explored, all the music that people know you from, is there a guilty pleasure or a style of music you like to listen to that people might be surprised to know? Like, are you shedding to AC/DC or Iron Maiden really loud in your studio? Or like, are you playing to the Carpenters or the Osmonds or like, what's the deal?
uh wow. Osmonds, no. Although was it Jay, the drummer back in the day?
It
Jay Osmond?
was.
Yeah.
I'm not telling how I know that, but it was actually I opened for the Osmonds on my first tour when I was 15.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I played in a singing
Great.
group in the band for a singing group called Spirit of America. And we opened for Heart, Styx, Blue Oyster Cult, and the Osmonds on some
Oh,
shows. Yeah,
wow.
it was weird. But it was Jay in the beginning. Sam Foster by the time I was doing that. And in fact, that's where I saw the very first Yamaha drum set. He had the very first two Yamaha drum sets to hit the US, one in his dressing room, one on his stage. But yeah, what would be some music people would be surprised that you'd like or listen to? Anything? Anything out of your normal purview?
I don't know. I think that sort of most people, if they are acquainted with me or familiar with me, they're probably ready for, oh, here it comes, But I'll tell you, a, a big part of music, I mean, music global to me is the intention, but how you how poignant can you do things? How can you do it with as much elegance and grace, but how poignant can you be in it? How can you bring something, and I don't know, name Steve Gadd comes into my head, right now.
I
And
think
I'm
he's
thinking,
going to do well. I've heard of this new guy.
yeah, yeah, I've heard really good reports about him too. Yeah, I think he's on his way up for sure. I think anyway. But no, I mean,
That's a good example, though. Yeah.
if you hear, oh my God, what's this record he did among the thousands of recordings he
Right.
did? Ricky Lee Jones, and
Oh,
this title of the song is "We Belong Together."
yeah.
And if anybody's watching, go research that song right now, and you will experience something incredible. I mean, I'm talking about like all dimensions of being heavy. This is absolute drum genius what he did on that
I'm going to
track.
have to revisit that. I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah. And and
Interesting.
and see that the Ricky Lee Jones starts the song by sort of playing it feels like a sort of 6/8, 12/8 kind of piano riff.
Mm-hmm.
And she's singing over it. She's singing the verses over it. And you kind of get used to that swing of the 6/8 or the 12/8. And then there's a little kind of bridge section,
Yeah.
and it's bridging all the magnificent sense of the word, because what happens is this is like Steve's entry point in it, and he's like, bling, yeah, and this all this time this piano's going on, and at this particular point he hits what the beat actually is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's all I'm going to give you.
That's a great example. Yeah. The
And
discombobulationism factor.
yeah. And he apparently it was documented. It might have even been documented in the liner notes by Ricky Lee Jones, how he came in and nailed that in one take.
Wow.
And it's just, it's like, greatness.
Great.
It's greatness. So I mean, anybody great. So that's one thing. Anybody great, is good.
Yeah.
And I just keep listening to those people
Right.
and try to figure out why they're doing what they're doing, how they're doing what they're doing, and how effective what they're doing is happening.
Yeah.
Can't even speak. That is coffee in the
There you go. Pearl.
drum cup. But um, yeah, so and for poignancy, I'm sort of thinking phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you phrase things in such a way that they really feel good, not overdone, but they give the music just that extra something. And the way that you might choose to play it in a thing just might give it the most special feeling in the world if you actually do it. If you
Yeah.
if you really nail it and you have a great night or a great recording session or whatever it is. I mean, that's my aim. And praising and poignancy. I listen to singers, great singers, and hear exactly where they sing those lines,
Yeah.
and you feel them. And if you hear another singer singing the same song, even with the same lyrics, for some reason it doesn't really kind of like get you as hard. But somebody does it a certain way, and you think, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
that really speaks to me." And when music gets you that on that level, I mean, that's that's all I can hope for, in
Yeah.
my time. to be able to express myself with that kind of eloquence and elegance and true with a true motive in there, true something with intent that really means something. And
Yeah.
that's all I want to do, Dan.
That's awesome. What are you
Yeah.
up to now? Gary and I were talking before we went live, and we were both shocked that when I looked back, it was 3 years ago that he
Yeah.
was on. So when you were able to get busy again, and you've been very busy this year, you played with Billy Cobham earlier in the year on keyboards. What have you been up to, and what do you have coming up?
Well, it's been, I'm happy to say and lucky to say it's been very busy. I'm just back from Italy, actually, where I was playing in a band with um, my friend, the guitarist with Billy Cobham's Spectrum 50 band, of which I'm the keyboard player right now.
Right.
We're going out in November in Europe doing some touring. Um, Incidentally, I was involved in Spectrum 30 band, which these are all kind of like anniversary tours of the great album Spectrum. So playing that material, but different each time.
Yeah.
And the first one, Spectrum 30, back in whenever it was, featured Lee Sklar on bass, the actual bassist on
Oh
Spectrums.
yeah, and I did a documentary with Billy at
Yeah,
his rhythm boot camp for the Spectrum 40 band anniversary with Rick Firabracci on bass, Dean Brown on guitar, and Jerry. I'm having a senior moment on keyboards with the Nord.
Jerry Atkins, yeah, he
Jerry
took over
Atkins,
from
yeah, yeah, of course,
he took over from me in that band.
yeah.
I was in it the first
Before
couple of
that,
years
and yep,
on keyboards. But so I did Spectrum 30, Spectrum 40, and Spectrum 50. Anyway, Rocco's a great composer and great guitar player. I didn't know him before, so he's a new friend, and we just did a big concert in South Italy with a fantastic French bass player called Romain Labai or Labay. I don't know how to pronounce that properly, but and a great South Italian trumpet player called Matteo Cutello.
mm,
And together we had like a four-piece thing. Never done it before. Worked out great.
that's
I mean,
great.
rehearsals are a little, but it was actually really, really good. And before that, I was in LA. So
Oh,
I was in California actually to do Steve Hawkins' drum fantasy camp.
right, I remember seeing that. Yeah,
Yeah. So that was my first experience ever as a sort of an instructor along with other drummers.
yeah,
And the other drummers, incidentally, happened to be such no names as Dave Weckl,
right.
uh, Gary Baldy. Um, Actually, I know those two lovely gentlemen, but also Lionel Lewis was there. This great younger player who's
Yeah,
working a lot with Snarky Puppy now,
yeah,
uh, and in and basically you had about sort of 90 to 100 students that all come through our classroom sessions um, in the space of 4 days. So everybody gets to see and spend time with one drummer. So they go away with like the experience of four drummers and very different kinds of
very
drummers.
different. Yeah,
Which was really hip, I think, of Steve to sort of, program it like that because each one of us was really, really quite different. And I can only imagine the classes that we gave were just as different, and informative on so many different particular levels, particular to the player hosting it, I guess. But with mine, I really concentrated on more of a creative thing. I think Dave Garibaldi was he's got this most incredible program with a lot of the beats that he revolutionized back in the Tower of Power days.
yeah,
Of course, with this Moella greatness and this technique and this uh, application to so much great music down the years. I mean, so they were all kind of inspired, very inspirational players. But the most amazing feeling of all was the feeling of all these drummers in one hotel, which is where it was. It was the Moores Hotel on Vine, is it on in Hollywood or
yes.
wherever? And
That sounds fun. Bunch of
Yeah, there was.
TVs going out the windows and
Yeah, that's right. I think that was back in the old days, though.
you guys didn't do that?
Can't even open windows nowadays. Maybe the TV goes through the closed window, the fixed window. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with the techniques anymore.
Now it would
And
probably bounce back off the window.
and then just after that, because I used to live in Los Angeles sort of area as well,
Yeah.
a
What
lot in
part did you live in?
Orange County,
Okay.
sort of the beach for a while,
Okay.
and also uh, sort of Studio City district
Yeah.
and
I
stuff.
lived in the West San Fernando Valley and Ventura.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ventura was probably the nearest, yeah, to
Yeah.
where I was, but yeah, so it was a great chance, and I'd done so much work there with Alan Holdsworth in that time space in the
Yeah.
80s. It's kind of like my home, really. So it was a great chance to actually we had 2 nights at the Potato, and I got
Mhm.
like a and friends lineup for 2 nights. I had Jimmy Johnson, the most incredible bass player, my
Yeah.
friend from the band,
That's
and
awesome.
plays with Steve Gadd and James Taylor and just about everybody in the world. Um, and the first night I had Michael Landau, the guitarist, who
Oh,
also works
wow.
with James Taylor.
That's
And
cool. Yeah.
never played with Mike, and it was just like, do you want to play? Would you play? And we discussed pieces and compositions as we lined it up, and it was great. The
That's
night
awesome.
after, the guitarist Andy Timmons, do you know him?
That name sounds very familiar. Who do you
Yeah.
play with?
Well, I heard him in some sort of more fusion recordings with Simon Phillips. There
Okay.
was
Yeah.
one album with Simon Phillips, and I was really impressed with him. I loved the bite of
Yeah.
had as a guitarist. So I asked him, but I mean, he's very into, a different kind of thing, the blues and sort of more sort of ballad guitar things. And, it wasn't really so much as a fusion kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it. And I picked a few of his pieces. We played those.
Great.
I had pieces.
Nice
And again,
variety.
yeah, we had that. And then we did the Alvis showroom in San Pedro.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was back with Michael Landau and Jimmy again. So I had 3 sort of glorious nights of playing,
That's
and
cool.
so many friends from my old times there, which
Yeah. A little
that was
visit
great.
back home.
So it's been busy lately, yeah.
That's
And I'm just
great.
about to go on the road now with John McLaughlin, which is probably his last.
Yeah. How old is John now?
Well, he's 82 or 83, I'm not
Wow.
sure. Born in 1942. So,
It's about 81, 82, coming up on 82. Yeah.
so um,
That'll be
and but
fun.
and there's been a band there with my friend the great Ranjit Barot. He's another unique one from actually born in England but raised in North India with a Kathak dancer as a
Oh, wow.
mother. Uh, steeped in uh, all the Indian traditions. Fantastic at conical, but plays a Western drum kit. So
Oh, interesting.
right away, it's really quite interesting and unique. And he's been developing that ever since, and he's an amazing player. We have Etienne Mbappe from Cameroon on bass, of course, from the famous Etienne from Joe Zawinul's band, and all kinds
Right.
of different other things. Um, and the 2 Yorkshire boys. Actually, I'm from Yorkshire, same as John is
Yeah.
in England. So yeah,
Is
it's
the
funny.
tour coming to the US, Gary, or is
No,
it just
no,
okay?
but actually, John just did his final tour there.
Okay.
I know there was one in 2017 or 16 or whatever it was,
Yeah.
17, and we did all the Mahavishnu music,
Yeah.
and it was the massed bands of us with the Fourth Dimension and Jimmy Herring's band, and we all played that music together. It was a real riot.
That's
Great.
cool.
And so and then John came just right now with Shakti with the two with Zakir Hussain and Salva Ganesh Vinayakaram on Kanjira and uh and what a great thing. So yeah, it's just been all go for him, I think, doing that and this will be the last time the members of the Fourth Dimension, i.e., myself, Etienne, and Ranjit and John, will play.
Yeah.
That'll be it. Well,
Interesting.
it's very unhappy. It's very sad that it's
Yeah.
17 years.
Well, might
But
there
it's
be a DVD or something that comes out of it, to
no,
commemorate? No?
no, nothing's been filmed. And actually, the Fourth Dimension did its last tour last year, the end of last year, and this year it's with a guest musician making it a quintet. So it's actually labeled the John McLaughlin Quintet. So it's a slightly different deal.
Yeah.
Um, and it basically would be our last time with John, which is kind of sad,
Mm,
but
yeah.
it comes to an end.
What a
Everything.
great body of music that just canvassed years and years and years of, what a career. One
It,
one can only hope for that, right? And look what he
yeah.
put out over that time span.
And
It's amazing.
my lovely wife is at me at she really suggests that I write a book with a lot of the experiences, like along the lines of the question you asked me about half an hour ago, which is what kind of, what nuggets of great information or
Yeah.
experience did you have with two, you know, respective musicians?
Yeah.
But I could really talk about a lot of them, and I'd love to talk about them. The only trick is, Dan, not to be too controversial on a good drummer show, but if you're going to start talking to people, in particular people who aren't here anymore,
Yeah.
it doesn't kind of add up if you don't mention the bad things as well.
You got to have balance. And I think there's a right way to do that, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a right way to do that where you show that, let's call it the more human side, and
Mhm.
you talk about the nuggets from the musician that people think they know and look up to and all of that. But I think some of the behind the scenes stuff is good, because it helps, to me, I think it helps humanize them. And I think that's
Yeah,
important.
yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, and those words are good, man. I appreciate those. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And anytime you want to come on and share any kind of nuggets from your career working with these other great musicians. I mean, look at the backup bands you've had. Alan Holdsworth, John McLeod. You've had some of those backup bands ever.
Yeah, there was quite, yeah, it was 36 years or so with Alan.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Um,
About.
well, my body's 63, but
Okay.
I'm 28.
Okay. Good. Yeah. I knew we were close in age, but I couldn't remember how old you were. I'm 60. And I feel
Okay,
the same way.
all
My
right.
my body, for the most part, thinks it's a lot younger. My brain sometimes thinks it's 90. Like my word bot gets stuck. It's just
Yeah,
stuff
I
like that.
relate. I
You know how you
relate.
move? Like you've moved. You know how you move, and it takes you a while to, like, oh yeah, the light switch. This is kept where are the pots. Okay, here, and it takes you a while to. I'm still figuring that bleep out after being in this house 7 years. I still find myself putting the dishes. Oh, those don't go there. They go. But my body's got it together. Well, Gary, thanks for coming
But
on.
I still
Well,
I
yeah,
still need
yeah.
a map to show to prove where the kitchen is. So
Well, my problem is my wife moves everything when I'm out of town. The whole house gets rearranged. The kitchen's where the living room was, the bedrooms were the. So I get that. But I really appreciate you coming on. You have so many great experiences, so many great stories from being influenced when you were young, growing up with music, in the studio, on the road, different things like that, doing things like Steve Orkin's drum camp. Come on again and let's share some more stories that people can learn from.
yeah, I'd love to anytime. I'm if I can be of any help or inspiration in whatever way to younger players or other players, I'm really happy doing that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, so much for joining Gary Husband and myself, Dan Schinder, here on Drum Talk TV. And thank you so much for following what we do. We have something really
Yes.
big coming out as well. So please Sign up for our email list. Big announcements coming really soon. Some of you might have seen some of it trickle out. It's easy on our Facebook page. There's a sign up button. If you're not on Facebook, what else would you do? Because you might be watching this on YouTube or on Twitter. Well, Steve will put our email sign up link in the comments and transfer it to their platforms. Thanks so much for following what we do. Gary, thanks again. Hang on the line for a moment. We'll have a quick chat, and everyone will see you again soon. If you're watching this live, Saturday, what's the date Saturday? Saturday is the 23rd. I'm doing Dan's almost daily vlog, and I'm going to celebrate some of the many albums that turned 50 this year. There's some awesome music that came out 50 years ago this year. I'm going to play some of that, and Steven Schinder, my son, and I are going to share some of that on our show Yes Shift as well. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you later.